what do you do after you've hit it big in crypto? In this video, I'm going to walk through the 10 essential steps that you need to take after a major liquidity event in crypto. Whether you're cashing out or thinking long-term, holding your assets, these steps will help you protect, grow, and preserve your wealth. So let's dive in. All right, first things first, we have to establish a family compass, charter, or constitution. So you might be thinking, what is that? How does that work? It's really the long-term vision for your wealth, where you want to go. You're deciding if you want to do lifestyle stuff, enjoy it while it's here. You're not really leaving anything to anybody else. Maybe you don't have kids or beneficiaries or people you want to take care of, and you want to maximize lifestyle. Maybe you want to set up a legacy, right? You want to have the family office. You want this to go on for generations, the next 100 years. What's that going to look like? How are you going to build out? What's the mission of your family? All those things. Or maybe you have philanthropic interests, okay? Maybe you want to give back. You have something on your heart that you've had an experience in your life or a loved one go through that you don't want other people to deal with, and you want to set up a foundation. You want to make donations. You want to drive benefits for people so that they don't have to experience those things. So that's kind of high level. What does each one of these include? Well, you're going to look at core values. What are the principles that guide your financial decisions? What's your North Star? You're going to have a mission statement. Similar here. What's the purpose of your wealth? Is it for security or philanthropic purposes, lifestyle, legacy, all those things I mentioned before? And what are your goals? You're going to determine milestones like funding education, supporting charitable causes, or growing the investments at a certain rate. And then you're going to look at roles and responsibilities. Make sure everyone in your family knows who they are, where they sit, what their part is in managing the wealth. So this step ensures that every decision you make is aligned with a long-term vision. Without it, wealth can quickly become confusing and a conflict and a problem instead of a blessing. So after you've set that up, number one, family constitution, North Star, know where you're headed, you're going to engage with a tax professional. So if you've cashed out, it's likely that you've triggered a taxable event, and you're going to figure out how to mitigate those taxes. We're coming out of the end of the year here in 2024. We're in November. You've got a couple months left. If you do have something this year, you're going to have to do something quick to be able to offset those capital gains, whether they're short-term or long-term, depending on how long you've held the asset. So here's the deal. The tax man is going to come knock on your door. We're looking at some stuff here from Trump. Maybe he takes away capital gains on crypto that doesn't exist yet. Or maybe there's some other laws or regulations that come in around this stuff. Until those things happen, we have to operate under the pretense that they're not, and the existing law and infrastructure is the way it's going to go. So irrespective, you're going to reach out to counsel for a tax advisor. We have many of those people at Digital Ascension Group, Digital Family Office. So love to help you there if that's something you're interested in. But anyway, you want to understand your liabilities. So what do I owe? Why do I owe it? How can we mitigate it? You're going to optimize those tax strategies. You're going to look at the tools to harvest losses or charitable contributions or depreciation or setting up insurance policies. A lot of different ways that you can, skin that cat, but you're going to figure that out. You're going to set aside enough cash to be able to pay the tax bill. So you're not caught off guard, okay? I see so many people that win the lottery or come into a bunch of money in crypto. You have famous cases where people evaded taxes and then were caught and they had to pay millions of dollars because of the penalties and fees, and you don't want to be in that position. So trust me, it's not an area of do-it-yourself. You want to get a professional and you want to get help to avoid the future headaches. Number three, you're going to want to build a liquidity buffer. Okay, so again, taxes aside, you're going to want some living expenses, and you're going to want to have an emergency fund and some of those things. This is something we talk about just in general for most people as a good practice. You want to make sure that you have, 3 to 12 months worth of expenses set aside somewhere, money market, earning interest, but easily accessible. It's liquid, okay? And maybe that's a line of credit against your crypto. We'll talk about that later, but you want to make sure that you have access to those tools because you don't know what you're going to do yet. How are you going to invest the money to be able to generate cash flow? Did you quit your job? I know a lot of people right off the jump quit their job. I don't recommend that either. I recommend hanging out for a little while, structuring these things, getting situated, getting used to having that money, and then making that transition. So if it's something that you're immediately going to do, I'm not saying don't do it, that it's not possible that you shouldn't. Some circumstances demand that, but just be calculated in the way that you're thinking about that. So you're going to think about this emergency fund as your financial safety net. Whether the market goes up or takes a big downturn unexpectedly, you don't have to worry about the volatility, and you have that stuff set aside so that you can make sure your bills are paid and you're taken care of, and your family's taken care of. Up next, after you have that, situated, you got your family compass. Within how you define your investment strategy, you might look at some diversification to invest in things that are uncorrelated digital assets, especially to hedge against the volatility here, right? Before constraints change, we're hopeful that we're going to get some regulation and utility and things are going to be more stable and developed. But as long as there's speculation in the space, we're going to have huge swings. And so having some, investments outside the scope of crypto and non-correlated asset classes could be a really good idea. The way that I like to think about this is the same way that Kevin O'Leary does. You should only have to get wealthy once, okay? You don't want to lose it all, betting it all again. You've already done the hard work in making a good choice, making a good investment, seeing it appreciate. You don't want to squander it and watch it go back down, okay? And we've seen a lot of people do that in crypto. So if you can pull some liquidity off the table, you might look at real estate. You can use cost seg on properties and pull that depreciation forward and offset some of the tax implications that you might have. You might want to look at stocks or bonds or ETFs. Some ways to get, diversification and maybe across a wider swath of some of these things. Most of the family offices that I've interacted with and deal with, they're looking at, somewhere between 15 and 25% exposure to equities, just public markets. And a lot of that is in ETFs. It's hard to pick winners in specific stocks. But if you have, you're investing in the S&P 500, over time, it's done 10% almost every single year. Over the long term, I'm bullish on the U.S. economy. I think now that we have Trump in here and some other things are coming down the pike, we might see a pullback in traditional stocks for a period of time, but I think the next decade and further out, things are looking good. They're looking up. So past the short-term volatility, over the longer time horizon, I do think we continue higher. You've also got bonds and treasuries and corporate debt, corporate credit. There's a bunch of different areas that you can diversify into. Kevin O'Leary, the way he thinks about this is he never puts more than 20% of his wealth in any one given asset class and never more than 5% of his wealth in one investment. And I think that's a great way or framework to look at it to make sure that you're not betting too much on one horse, unless you really know, diversification is a hedge against ignorance. I will say that. If you understand a space, and a lot of family offices do, they keep the core of how they built their wealth as the main focus, and they may diversify within that ecosystem or whatever that investment thesis is. And they might have a few ancillary things, but a lot of what they do is continue to double down on what they understand. So a lot of people here in crypto may end up continuing to do the same thing. And that's why we're going to go to number 5, which is considering holding your crypto as a long-term wealth driver. We've seen so many people get wealthy with Bitcoin, right? They were confident in the beginning. They made investments at $1, $5, $10, $100, $300, $3,000. All of those people have done extremely well over the last decade here. And, depending on what crypto you're in, my preference is XRP, but, we've got other ones. We've got HBAR, we've got XLM, we've got XDC, we've got ADA. Like, there's a ton of different assets out there that I think will have long-term utility and use case that will drive their price and adoption. And so if you're going to hang on to it, you can borrow against it, or you can put it into other things. So you've got, like I said, the exponential growth, historical growth of some of these assets that have shown they're a great place to hold your wealth. You've got passive income opportunities with staking, if that's native to that network or protocol, or the asset that you're holding. Some of the people that, again, I deal with XRP, AMMs, liquidity pools, lending, and other DeFi that's being built out on that network. And there's some other strategies that you can use. You've got perps, you've got, if you're outside the US, and you have options plays.